So if we don't want to avoid sin for our own sake, we should do it for those around us. One of the things that Father Alberione did, which was really impressive, he prayed that any time any of the boys or anyone in his orders had grievous sin or had bad sin, that he would take on the temporal punishment for that. He would get terrible, violent stomach aches where he couldn't eat. He would have such bad pains. And there were times some of the boys would even joke about it. He'd be up on the altar and he'd kind of double over and he'd be like, what did you do last night? Because he's not feeling too good. But he took on all of that sin because he wanted them to know too how important it was, and he really wanted the salvation of all those who worked under him. He felt so responsible not only for their physical well-being, but their spiritual well-being too. And to be able to do that was such a lesson to me about why we want to avoid sin, what bad effect it can have. It impressed me a lot. So, as did Paul before him, Blessed Alberione never worked alone. He always wanted collaborators. He always wanted sisters, priests, brothers, everybody to work together. And it wasn't only for the success of the family, but it was for everyone's salvation. It was for the entire world that he wanted this. This is actually a picture of me then when I made my promises to become a Pauline cooperator. So just so you know, to become a Pauline cooperator, become one of the third order members of the Pauline family, there's a 6-month discernment period, and once a month you come here to the chapel, and we have an hour of adoration and then an hour of sharing and talking about the Pauline history and Pauline spirituality. And over those 6 months, you decide if that's something that you want to do. Then there's a 12-month period after that, where once a month you do the same type thing, where you do adoration, and then there's sharing and talking about ways that you can actually participate in the Pauline charism, and really practical ways about how to bring Jesus Master, the way, the truth, and the life to everyone else in the world. Then at the end of that time, you write a letter to the superior. Sister Margaret Timothy here is currently the Superior General for the United States. She's from Hawaii originally, and so she's in Boston now at the Mother House. And then Sister Margaret Charles Carey is the one who's in charge of the Pauline cooperators. And then if you're accepted, then there's a mass and a ceremony, and you actually make your promises at that time. So after the cooperators come the Daughters of St. Paul, the ones that we know best here in St. Louis. Here's a picture of our St. Louis community recently. They have a lot of the same missions as the priests and the brothers. Any form of social communication, any way that they can make Jesus Master known to the world is what they're going to do. They pack their van and drive off to shows. They go to parishes to share all that they can, all the books, all the forms of media that they have, the movies, anything they can to, and mainly spend time talking to people at the parishes, evangelizing. Now, Venerable Mother Tekla Merlo, she's considered the first daughter of St. Paul. She's the co-foundress of the Daughters of St. Paul. She was way ahead of her time too. One of her quotes that I like is she said, "Our order is always going to be young because we are always going to be using every new means to do good." And she was always excited about trying to learn new means of media, new forms of media, new ways to evangelize. This is a picture of the first set of Daughters of St. Paul, and there's Mother Tekla, right? These are a lot of different pictures of Mother Tekla. They called her tireless Mother Tekla. She was always running around. That's a beautiful stained glass window that's been made of her now. This is her when she was in Japan. She flew everywhere to visit all the daughters. Every day she prayed, she fasted, she wrote to the sisters, she encouraged them. She didn't sleep very much. She was always busy and gave her entire life to the Daughters of St. Paul. She'll be canonized soon too. Now when the Daughters of St. Paul, they did the same thing. Father Alberione would send them to places. Now, the first one was when they sent Sister Adolorata in 1931 to Brazil. Now here's what he told her. He calls Sister Adolorata in and says, "You're going to go to South America." And she said, "Oh, where?" And he said, "Why don't you go to Brazil?" And she said, "Don't they speak Portuguese there?" And he said, "Yeah, but you'll learn it after you get there. That's fine." And she said, "Okay, should I just present myself to the Archbishop?" He said, "No, I actually sent the Archbishop letters, and he said under no circumstances are you to send any of the sisters to Brazil." And she said, "So they don't want me there?" And he said, "No, but some of the priests are going." And he said, "They're okay, so why don't you just disguise yourself and act like don't let them know you're one of the sisters." So when they got there, the bishop was really upset. "What is this? There's a sister with you." And I said, "No." So She didn't dress like a sister for quite a long time, but she knew that if Father Alberione sent her, it was going to work out. And sure enough, a couple months later, the Archbishop said, you know what, we really do need the Daughters of St. Paul. So she got to put her veil back on and start. And that happened all over the place, where he would send them to places where at first they said they weren't wanted, or they would even get to places and they said, we don't want you, go back to where you came from. But it always worked out that they came. Now in 1931 is when the sisters first came to the Americas and South America. They went to Argentina also. Mother Paula is actually the first one that came to the United States. It was Sister Paula and Sister Anita at the time. They came June 28, 1932. Now imagine, the Great Depression is going on. They didn't have money. They were sent here. They didn't have a place to live. They didn't have anywhere to go. He just sent them here to get started. And you tell Sister Paula's mom's not too happy about the whole thing, about her coming and everything. But Sister Paula actually was very excited about coming. Mother Tekla was much more motherly than Father Alberione was, and she secretly gave them an envelope with 2,500 lira in it and said, here, when you get there, here's a little money so at least you can find a place. I don't want you wandering the streets without food or shelter or anything. So as soon as they arrived in the United States, Sister Paula asked how to get to a post office. And what she did was she immediately put the 2,500 lira and sent it back to the sisters because she knew how much they needed it back here. So she wanted to start without a penny because she knew that if she were like St. Paul and started without a penny and just counted on God's graces and God's goodwill, that everything was going to work out. So Sister Paula and Sister Anita started walking the streets of New York. They were meeting families. They're helping people who didn't have food. They didn't have any food themselves. They're giving them Bibles. And New York fell in love with them like the first week, and they have been ever since. This is Mother Paula later in life. This is one of my all-time favorite stories too, because you have to imagine, Blessed Alberione, or it was Father Alberione at the time, he was so revered. Everybody knew that he was going to be a saint, and so everybody revered him, and it was a lot to say anything back to him. He had written a prayer to send to all the sisters, and she didn't like the way it ended. And so she told him it ended, and she would shout out as they were working. This is actually her working on a machine. She would be covered with ink and working on machines and fixing things around the house. She was another one that didn't sleep much and was working all the time. But she would shout out to start to the sisters, by myself I can do nothing, and then all the other sisters would yell, but with God I can do all things. For the love of God, I want to do all things. To him honor and glory, to me the eternal reward. Now originally, instead of saying to me the eternal reward, Father Alberione wrote, to me scorn. He came to visit and she said, I do not like the way that ends, to me scorn. And which, to say anything to, they were just amazed. And he put his head down and then he smiled and he eventually said, you're right. And so the prayer's been changed ever since. So now it's, for me, the eternal reward. She goes, we're not all working for scorn, we're working for an eternal reward. And so this is a picture of them in Derby, New York in 1952. So that's Mother Paula on the far end, and then Mother Tekla behind him and Father Alberione, and then the Daughters of St. Paul coming to greet them.